Okay, we're going to get started. I think we have about 34 participants today for the Rivers Coalition meeting, Thursday, July 23rd. So thanks everybody for joining us. We've got some things to talk about this meeting and get going. We got a great presentation by Blair Wickstrom on about voting for water and vote water on this coming up election. So got a lot to talk about and a lot of things coming up in the state and local situations. So we're going to get started. We usually, and if we're meeting in the commission rooms, and we would normally have our pledge allegiance to the flag. But in lieu of that, I've just asked all of our members and hopefully extend to all the public to, whenever you see our flag, to pledge allegiance and to have respect for that, and to understand that our men and women who fought for this country and are still working to fight for the defense of this country are out there in harm's way, and we need to respect that. We need to respect our freedoms and that we all enjoy. So with that, we'll kind of skip off into our agenda. And basically, I want to get also recognize elected officials that are with us today. I think I saw Commissioner Matheson. Commissioner, are you with us?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing this morning? I wish we could all meet together in the commission chambers. I look forward to that coming up.
Yep, someday we hope to. Thanks, Commissioner. Any other elected officials? Did you mention Representative Overdorf is on the line, or anybody?
How you doing? Good morning. Great to see everybody, and anxious to hear what you all have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay. Did I miss any elected officials? And we'd like to go with candidates now too. So if any candidates, if you could just give us your name and office you're a candidate for, just currently, just real briefly, we appreciate it.
Hi, this is Elisa Ackerley here. I am a Democratic candidate for State Representative, District 82, and I am happy to be here today. Thank you for sending me the email.
All right. Any other candidates for this coming election or position? All right. Hearing none, we're going to kind of get started. Like I mentioned, we have a great presentation. This is coming up on the primaries this next month, and also the general election in November. It's an important year for everybody, and we always monitor how legislative activity is going and things particularly pertaining, of course, to the river and to the river waterways. So I want to introduce Blair Wickstrom. Blair, why don't you, Daryl's going to help share the screen and get it started. So give us your presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Hopefully everybody can hear me fine. I think the key again is understanding that we have a political problem in our waters. We've got hopefully a political solution to fix a political problem. This has been going on for 7 years. It's not an easy fight because the nature of the battlefield. The battlefield is constantly changing and moving, and so the players change, the incentives for various offices and candidates change. So it's one of those things where we continue to have sort of a changing of the goalposts, so to speak. And with Vote Water, what happened with Vote Water is pretty kind of almost it's amazing in its coalition and collaboration in the words Vote Water. And between 2018 and 2020, 3 different groups from 3 different estuaries registered the URL, the web address, or created a social media outlet with Vote Water in them. Votewater.org was registered in Florida Bay by Florida Bay Forever. Vote Water, the hashtag and online, was registered in 2018 by a group on the West Coast, One Tree, that was following with the Bull Sugar voter guide in 2018 on the East Coast, but started their own and called it Vote Water. In this past year, Bull Sugar registered vote-water because vote water was already registered. But all three groups from all three estuaries got together to try to put together a comprehensive plan and guide on how to fix a political problem. And that's with a political solution. So I'd like to, Daryl, if you want to show a couple little clips that we're going to be using both on television and with social media. We've got some clips that will do that, and then I'll share my screen and sort of just touch on the website on really on what boat water is all about.
The smell was indescribable. It was worse than sewage. Anytime a boat would pass us and they would wake us in splash water, we were covered in a disgusting film. And we also had a huge fear of just breathing the air.
The salinity gets so high from the lack of fresh water coming through the Everglades. You notice the seagrass was disappearing. Now when the seagrass disappears, there's no shrimp, there's no crabs. The fish also have nothing to eat, so they leave.
Algal blooms, broadly speaking, are the result of human-induced changes in the environment. Nutrient-enriched water really fuels bacterial and algal blooms. And we know from studies that simply living near water where these blooms occur represents a human health risk.
Port St. Lucie Lake remains closed to the public. In January, tests found blue-green algae in the OL Peacock Sea.
The biggest problem for the bay is that the bay has a chronic deficit of fresh water.
Save the Everglades, save the Indian River Lagoon. The time has come. No more time to waste. Let's get the job done.
Let me share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see the young boy enjoying his time on the water. This is the Boat Water website. I'll sort of just kind of scroll through the site to give everybody an overview, and then we'll deep dive into it a little bit to give you an idea of what we're using and what we're doing to come up with the voter guides. Again, Florida water crisis is a political problem, requires a political solution. Here's a link to the guides. We'll kind of just sort of move through this a little bit to give you an idea of the breadth of what we're trying to do. Again, this is an area where you can sign up to be part of the fight, join the fight, sign up for the pledge. Again, this is a nonpartisan group. We have Republicans and we have Democrats and we have people from all over the state. You can see the yard sign is similar to the Bull Sugar yard sign from the last election cycle. You can sort of, hopefully most of you remember the water check, and I know a lot of you still have those yard signs, but these will be new yard signs that you will start to see on your streets and in your communities all over South Florida. Not Republican or Democrat, but voting for water. And what we're looking to focus on, the key election issues. Again, you can sort of see them here on the website. Again, it's holding major polluters accountable. It's making human health a priority. Fully funding pollution monitoring and enforcement. Buying more land in the EAA for storage and treatment. And almost more importantly than anything else is electing sugar-free politicians. The people that represent us should not be beholden to a special interest. They should be representing us and you. And again, one of the more important ones, this is an effort that Rivers Coalition supported by a mission, a statement, and position statement on lowering the lake during the dry season. And it's not just lowering the lake, obviously, it's sending water into Florida Bay where they need clearly water. And we saw that with a speaker at Rivers Coalition within the last year, the importance of the water in Florida Bay, fresh water, clean water, prioritizing funding it with sewage upgrades, holding, again, this is our effort with Vote Water is to move outside of just the shadow of Lake Okeechobee and get, hopefully in the future, across the state. And other polluters like phosphate companies need to be accountable for their pollution. And finally, prioritizing above ground water storage versus these sort of unproven, almost proven to be ineffective in-ground storage systems. And so, in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. It's a group of nonpartisan people from around the state, and what we're looking to do is build on that coalition, build on the idea that it's more than just a single solution. It's more than one area versus the other. A lot of times we get sort of pigeonholed into being described as single solution groups and people, when really all of this has got to be done holistically. It's one of those things where if you don't treat it that way, you're not going to succeed. And but in the end, it's fairly simple. We have to take the special interest out of the equation. And part of, like what we said, is that we're going to be working together to really nail down the people that are going to fix a political solution with a political problem. And so if you go to the top of the website in the About Us, you can sort of see a snapshot of who the people are at Vote Water. And here you can see the hundreds of thousands that used the Bull Sugar voter guide in 2018. 2020, we look to try to expand that coverage. And with doing that, we used a group of what we're calling Vote Water County Captains. And in that, we have regional captains. These are people that are in the districts of the people who are running for election, who have connections with them, who have local knowledge and will do this for us. And we broke it down a little bit similar to how the water management districts are broken down. And so in this particular case, you can see South Florida Water Management District has nothing to do with the district, except we just use the counties that we're covering that are part of that district. And so now you can see the people that are involved. And two of your Rivers Coalition people, again, this isn't a Rivers Coalition endorsement or involvement, but two of the people, just like a lot of the other folks that you see here, are Rivers Coalition board members. And that's myself and Charles Grande. And again, this has nothing to do with the Rivers Coalition. It's a lot of it has to do with there's other people in this group that are part of other 501c3 organizations, and they cannot get involved in political endorsements. They can't get involved in political campaigns. But Vote Water, Bull Sugar is a 501c4, and they can. So a lot of these groups that or a lot of the people that you see representing Vote Water, they are involved in other water advocacy organizations, but they're C3s, so they're not representing those organizations, they're representing themselves in this effort. And so that's the southern part of the district. You can see here for Manatee, Sarasota, Charlotte counties on the upper west coast, we have people that are involved. And then north of us, you can see where we're reaching into the upper Indian River Lagoon with a group of folks that are up there. And so this is who we are in terms of who's making the decisions on the endorsements, because that's important to know that it's not there's not special interests involved. There's no particular one individual group involved. It's several groups, it's several people from all over the state. As it says here, business leaders, educators, fishing guides, mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. And so I think it's pretty important to understand that these are the people that are working for this organization, and so you just try to take out some of that again, those influences that are from one group or the that are associated with one group or another. We could stop for potential questions, or what I'll do in the last few minutes is just touch on the voter guides. They're here. You can click on them. Again, I don't want to get into the actual endorsements. You can make that decision, but if you click on the front page, you can click on it, in several different places. But you can get to the voter guide. It's real simple. We covered 14 counties. And then if you go to your particular county, if you go to Martin County, where a lot of us are from, you can see we came up with a sort of a good, better, best way of rating candidates. So it's beyond just endorsed candidates. We sent out questionnaires. We sent out the questionnaires a minimum of 5 times to all the people that we had from the supervisor of elections, and so I think it's one of those things where, again, we try to cover it where it's pretty self-explanatory. The questions, you could see if they were marked yes or no, and then you can see the ratings. 2 checks is better than 1 check. 3 checks is the best. So it's sort of a good, better, best. And then there was a anti-endorsement for somebody that generally has had connections with special interests or has fought against what we're trying to do. So we're trying to give people in the primary a clear picture of who is going to fight and prioritize water in the upcoming elections. And so you can see that we covered the Martin County. Again, this is in the state Senate. And this is in 82, where we may make an endorsement, but we also support. So it's a good, better, best. It's not an all or nothing. It's not a black or white, and it's fairly fluid in terms of how we look at potentially changing down the road. And ultimately, in the end, what we're looking to do is sort of like a NRA who influences way outside of their real size and their constituents, but they really do a good job in Washington in terms of influencing legislation and legislators because of the fear that they would come after them. I don't think Vote Water is ever going to have the money that NRA has, but hopefully we have the people. And so what we look to do in the future is put together potentially a scorecard, an ongoing scorecard. So it's not just an every 2-year election cycle phenomena. It's a ongoing scorecard of the actual work that these candidates, and no longer candidates, but the people in office are doing, fighting for you. And so that's going to be important because how you govern, how you vote is ultimately more important than how you run in a campaign. And so that will be our ultimate goal is to work on that and to have that for people beyond just a every 2-year sort of effort around the elections. And so that's in a nutshell what we're trying to do. I think in terms of what we feel you can do would be to help share the idea of a voter guide. You can reach out and speak to your legislators or representatives. You can, again, contact us and we can get a sign for you. The organization can, as a 501c3, can promote the idea of voting for water, but you cannot directly endorse candidates. But you can vote or you can promote the idea of a Vote Water campaign. or effort. And that's sort of what we're doing with Rivers Coalition today. We have the situation where we have an unprecedented effort by a congressman that represents this district. And what we've seen is unlike any support for our water here in the St. Lucie Estuary in the last 70 years. We have not had the effort that our current congressman, Congressman Brian Mast, has put towards the water. He has prioritized it. That's the type of person. He set the precedent in terms of what we need. And then we had another situation where we had a city commissioner take on that same role in his position as a city commissioner to prioritize water over other issues. The other issues are important, but when you prioritize water, if we can build the coalition at all levels of government, then we have solved something that we haven't been able to solve. And that's that political problem with a political solution, getting the right people into office who will prioritize water, who will make human health safety of the people they represent the most important thing, or one of the most important things that they work towards. And so that's what Vote Water is all about. And Daryl, I'll turn it back to you and answer any questions that anybody else might have.
I'll run that second clip for you now, Blair. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm going to stop your screen share.
I'm Jack, I'm 13, and I'm a water warrior.
The algae that looks like this around the St. Lucie locks is 15 times more toxic than what environmental experts consider safe.
Florida's water crisis is a political problem and requires a political solution.
The time to fix the river is now. I paddle and I vote water.
Science is settled. Human health matters and I vote water.
Clean water is important to me and my family. We fish and I vote water.
For clean water candidate voter guides, visit votewater.org.
What scares me about the blue-green algae is the unknown for my kids in the future. It's scary to not know. Like when you have a baby and not know what that could do to them.
That was very good. Blair, thank you for that. As Blair mentioned a couple of times during his talk, you know, as a 501c3 organization, the coalition and other of us who are 501c3s are not allowed to endorse or promote a candidate. And yet the 501c4s, such as votewater.org and others, I know in Sierra has some, and other 501c4s are able to be more politically active in those areas. Our intention here, and I think what Blair is trying to present, is those asking candidates these questions. And Blair, I think there were 5 questions that the candidates were asked in your questionnaire rating there. Could you share those quickly with us, the 5 questions that you asked?
Let me see if I can. Maybe if you can touch on something else. Let me find it.
Well, if people could find them, do they find them on the Vote Water?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like if
so if they go to the website votewater.org, then they could be able to see the questions you're asking candidates.
Yeah, on any of the candidates, when you see the check mark, you would go to that candidate and you would see the questions that they answered yes to, and a lot of them expanded their answers. So you'll see the question and their answers on every one of the check marks in the voter guides.
Okay, great. I know that all of us kind of received recently in this area anyway our sample ballot that's going to be for the primaries coming up. And when you look over that sample ballot and you see the candidates, it's, you know, all of us are kind of get responsible before we vote is to get as much information as we can about the candidates and understand who's running and what their platform is and what they're running for. and that's important. So this, along with other information that we could gather up, is very important. So there may be other organizations and other places that we all can get information about the candidates, about what they do. And even if they're incumbents or electeds and they're being reelected or up for reelection, then those are important too, to talk to them directly, but also to find out from organizations like this, where you can get those kind of questions asked and answered, and you do your own rating. And then basically, as Blair says, I think our interest as a Rivers Coalition is to have candidates in office and elected officials in office that can vote for water and help our water issues in this river and all across our state. We need people in our state and federal legislators and congressmen to be able to act on water issues and help us to clean up our waters. So again, we're not trying to promote or endorse a candidate. We're trying to get information to our members and to other organizations, members, in order to get the best information we can in order to make intelligent decisions when we go to the polls and vote, because it is important once they get in office, whoever's in office, is to make sure we get on top of that and work with that person in office to help guide them to direct our water issues into legislation that'll be meaningful and effective to clean up the water. So Blair, thank you for doing that. If there are quick questions, maybe we could take a few at this time. Somebody we're not using the raise our hand function, but I see people on the chat function, and I see some chat that was talking about, can we, we can reach out to other voters assistance people. We will not be holding a candidate forum online necessarily. I think it's important for all of us to canvass candidates ourselves and through perhaps our own organizations. But we as a Rivers Coalition didn't plan to hold a candidate forum this year particularly. Any other questions for Blair, or moving on? All right. We'll move on to Martin County. Oh, yep. Go ahead, Richard.
Seeing there seems to be more Republicans in our area, if we see a candidate that we think is going to be better, but they're a Democrat, how can we get them elected, seeing there's more Republicans than Democrats?
Well, if I can answer that, I think it's up to the Democrats to get behind that person and get them elected. And I think if we all prioritize water, who's going to fight for water the best in our situation and what we're trying to do here? I mean, there's so many other political issues going on and social, issues going on that it's sometimes hard to focus all emphasis on water when there's so many other things going on. But in our case, we're focusing everything on water. And maybe there's other issues that person is going to be better at or should be involved in those discussions. But we can't really address that. We can't track all of those other issues. So in this particular case, we need the best water warrior. We don't necessarily need the party. We can't think about, well, who's in majority, who is going to be the best person based on, their connections, based on their money, we haven't really focused that much on electability as much as who is going to be the best water warrior, regardless of party. And so for the Democrats and traditionally strong Republican areas, the primary is far more important than the general election. Because a lot of times that's where that war is going to be waged. And so that August 18th is critical, and getting the best person that's going to represent either party. And so if the Democrats are not going to win an election because they just don't have the numbers, we need the best Republican. And that could be the exact opposite in areas where the Democrats are going to win. Unless something really drastic happens. So what in those cases, like in South Florida, we're working extra hard to get the best person within whatever party it is that has the majority to be the best water warrior. So to answer your question, I think it's twofold. It's one, get the best water warrior to represent the Democratic Party, and then we get behind that person, and then we get the best person to represent the Republicans. Regardless of the party, again, it's water. And so that's what again, the answer is get the best water warrior and get behind them.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Richard, he's right. I mean, it's a nonpartisan issue. We hear that all the time, and it should be a nonpartisan thing, that water and all the environmental issues, including offshore drilling and everything, are really important issues that need to be addressed by whatever party is up there being ready for election. So we need to focus on water warriors or water champions or people that are going to champion the cause of clean water in our environment. So, all right. Thanks, Blair. Thanks again for your presentation. And
Can
if you
I
want
say something, please?
more information, go to .org. Yep. Who was that?
Diane Goldberg.
Diane, go
St.
ahead.
Lucie Audubon. If we're going by track record, I think we not only have to see what the person is doing here, if they're already in government, but what they're doing for the whole country. We cannot say that the person is doing a good job if they're only handling our water problem because it's personal for him where he lives, and then votes against clean water around the country. We should not be saying that he is a good person to vote for if he is harming our environment around the entire country, except for this one issue here.
Okay, well, that's a valid point. I think what Diane's referring to is that when you have elected officials and you review their track records throughout their voting history or their legislative history in Congress or in the state legislature, then it's important that we evaluate that holistically as a candidate and not necessarily specific to the water issue. But our focus here at Rivers Coalition is water issues, and I understand your comment. Thanks. All right, Martin County, is John Mayle or Katie available? I didn't see their report. I know John was attending to other issues. Anybody from Martin County? How about City of Stewart is next on the agenda. City of Stewart, do we have Ben Hogarth? Mr. Matheson, Commissioner Matheson, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Ben may be working on other issues. The only update I really have is Ben and I both attended the recent web meeting by the Corps presented by Savannah Lacey about deviation from LOR's 08 schedule for harmful algal blooms. And Mark, I know you made some well-received comments at the end, and so did a few others. City of Stewart's working on written comments for those deviations. I believe they need that adaptive, flexible management in the future here. So there were some comments that make me nervous, but that flexibility is important, going forward, taking into account harmful algal blooms in the lake that we presently have. So that's the main update that's happened in the past couple of weeks. And City of Stewart will be submitting written comments on that. I think I encourage anyone else to look over that material. Those comments are due, I believe, the 30th.
This is Diane Hughes with Martin County. Yes, we just had a meeting today internally within the county, and we are going to be making comments as well on the deviation. Mark, I thought John was going to send you a slide on our comments for today. He didn't send you a slide?
No, I didn't receive anything.
Okay. So, I mean, as you know, we've
Thanks
still
for
been
being on the call, though. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Not a problem. we've been continuing to have rain, and the salinity levels are definitely going down in the mid estuary, and really fair for oysters, and getting better near the inlet. We have had, because of the rains, a lot of enterococcus issues where the Department of Health has posted, at Leighton Park and certain areas. And actually, it seemed to get a little bit up into the southern part of the Indian River Lagoon, where they didn't post there, but there were moderate levels of enterococcus. So all this local runoff that we're having from the rains is just being a big impact on our system. And we have not had any Lake Okeechobee discharges, and we haven't had since last year. So kind of our own system is our own fault right now.
Thanks,
That's pretty
Diane.
much all.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Mark, this is Daryl. I got a question for either Diane or Merritt.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Just wondered if there's any insight into any of the dredging projects. Have they been in any touch base with the Army Corps in the last few weeks?
I just recently started asking internally questions about that, because I was hoping that we could get some BMAP credit for the project. But it's my understanding from Kathy Fitzpatrick, our coastal engineer, that the dredging is not going to include any muck dredging, and we can only get BMAP credit for our BMAP if there's muck that's being removed during this project. And that's all I know. And no, the county, I don't think, has had direct contact with the Corps on the project.
So as probably people know, the Corps of Engineers is planning to dredge the Okeechobee waterway, which extends from basically the crossroads out by the inlet all the way through the estuary, middle estuary, down through the South Fork and out to the St. Lucie Lock. So they had planned a couple of reaches. They had said they're going to dispose of material in 2 different places, but they didn't give a full kind of plan of what they're doing. Their comments were kind of by July 15th. They wanted comments. We're hoping to continue to comment to the Corps about this, and I hope the county and the city both weigh in to the Corps on this dredging of the Okeechobee waterway. They claim it's a maintenance kind of dredging operation, but there are disturbances that happen when they start dredging up this muck material, even out of the channel in the middle of the estuary, and it could be flocculated and move out into the outer areas over seagrass beds or oyster reefs. So all of us are kind of concerned about that project. Daryl, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I just wondered if Merritt had a comment.
Anything from the city? Yeah, on that.
So our comments were geared towards, questioning about the involvement of muck removal. I think Diane touched on that. This is more of a maintenance from what we've heard, and our comments were geared that we would prefer no dredging to occur if there are discharges out of the S80 or in rain events, but we haven't heard any, reply back or further communication with the Corps from those comments.
Right. So I think all of us need to follow up with the Corps on that. And Barbara, I'll share that kind of contact information for that person in the Corps on that particular project. Okay. So we'll put that on our website about that Okeechobee waterway dredging project that's planned, and everybody can weigh in on it to them.
Can you share that information with me, Mark? I kind of passed off on that email that I received that it was happening, because I thought it was more of a coastal engineer Kathy Fitzpatrick thing. Sure. And then I realized that there's an actual document that Tallahassee drafted back in 2014 of how we can get BMAP credits for dredging projects.
Oh, okay.
And when she told me there's no muck removal, and you just mentioned, well, yeah, they're going to be removing muck. But I think to get the credit, they have to remove the muck all the way down to the sand layer.
Right.
That's the only way we can get the BMAP credit.
Yep. And if they're only planning to dredge it for an 8-foot deep channel, 80 feet wide, then they may not be removing much. I don't know. But it settles in the deeper part.
Is it that Michael guy?
Yes, yeah.
What's the last name?
It's let me look it up. It's Michael Ornella, Ornella.
Okay,
And
good.
and I'll forward the whole notification from the Corps that has that information in it, and it has all the detail. And I think Ed Killer did a good article in Church Coast newspapers on June 19th, actually, that really outlined all of the details as well. So again, that's a project that the city and the county and all of us need to make sure we put our 2 cents in there on that. Anything else for the county or the city? And then we'll move on to the district.
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Can you allow me to share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm not sure if folks are being able to see my screen at this time.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
So this is a report from the Water Management District report. Jackie Thurlow-Lippisch wasn't able to be here, but she wanted to kind of send her regrets. She's down doing a field trip with the district about a Miami-Dade bird dry basin problem that's going on there. But here's the kind of the 4 things that she outlined from the governing board meeting, which was held on July 9th. She and Ed were up in a plane on the 18th of July, just a little while ago, and winds appeared to blow the algae bloom to the north, from the southwest along the shoreline marsh areas over on Lake Okeechobee. She did post on her Facebook and blog all the aerial photos, and a little bit later we have Todd Thurlow we got a video to show you some of those images too from her flight. Number 2 was South Florida Water District sampling at Sailfish Point monitoring wells. The other item was monitoring Lake Okeechobee sediment discharges to the lake, to the Caloosahatchee and the estuaries. It was on the consent agenda that they would be hiring USGS to do this, and we already kind of know the sediment loading is huge that comes from Lake Okeechobee discharges to both these estuaries, but particularly to the St. Lucie. And we've documented that before. Gary Goforth and others have already documented how much silt and sediment comes through in those discharges. So we commented on that. And then the last item was the project partnership agreement with the Central Everglades Planning Project and the district to help move that forward and deliver more water south. That was item 26. And basically, the district was working to kind of present what moving that water south in the Central Everglades plan, but also how that dealt with things going forward. The governing board members, though, did too present. And Jennifer Reynolds is now, who was with the Corps, is working with the district. She presented the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Program, and that has to deal now with putting all 3 of these watersheds, the Okeechobee, the St. Lucie, and the Caloosahatchee together. And they're coming up with these watershed protection plans. They did the one for Lake Okeechobee workshop on the 21st, just Tuesday. And then they're doing one on St. Lucie River watershed on August 28th. And then the Caloosahatchee on September 2nd. So we put out the notice there if you want to register for the August 28th St. Lucie watershed. I advise we weigh in on that issue as well. And they've had other meetings dealing with ASR today and yesterday, and we attended some of those too, which they're trying to get this ASR program going in north of the lake, which is the 10 ASR wells they're planning to put in clusters north of the lake as part of Lake Okeechobee watershed project. And a lot of us are trying to weigh in on that too, and being concerned about the ASR situation and how they do that and how much it really affects stopping some of the discharges that come into these local estuaries. If we talk about a Lake Okeechobee update, let me here's Paul Gray had mentioned that he had to go to MCOR's meetings but he said the lake is filling up slowly, like it not as fast, and that's pretty normal for this time of year, but it's still below the sub-band, and it slopes upward this time each year, so the line is pretty much in the same vein. So Daryl, I'm going to try showing this video from Todd Thurlow. Todd, thanks very much for putting this together. We'll see how this goes. You see my screen still?
Hello, this is Todd Thurlow. Mark asked me to give a quick lake report because Dr. Paul Gray could not make the meeting today. This is being recorded because I'm at my daughter's high school graduation this morning. The website is Eye on Lake O if you want to go look at some of the data and imagery I'm going to be sharing here. So to go straight to the website, let's start with the lake levels. Hopefully I'm not stealing someone's report, or they're not giving this report later, but starting with the status map this morning, July 23rd, the lake level is at 12 point, didn't mean to click on that, is on 12.81 feet. Yesterday was at 12.77 feet. A week ago was at 12.56 feet. So the lake is rising. Inflows are at 4802 cubic feet per second. There's very little structure outflows. As you can see, the water going south is at 0. We have S308 at the C44 canal flowing backwards, probably for irrigation. Just to put that into perspective really quickly, back in April 15th, when the lake was low, you could see there was 1376 cubic feet going south. So when the lake was low and things were dry, water's going south. Now the lake is rising and it's raining, and we've got 0 going south. Back to the website and just the way that looks on the plot. You can see here in April, when we were getting very close to the to the water shortage management ban. Now that it's raining, the lake is rising. We're approaching the 13 feet mark here, and we've crossed over the top of the beneficial subband. So back to imagery, which I think is what Mark really wanted me to show. Unfortunately, with all the rain and clouds we've had, the satellite imagery's been blown out with clouds. But the good side to that is that the clouds keep the algae down. It's still in the lake, but it just doesn't get into the big blooms without the sunlight. So to skip back a couple of days, this is on the 20th. The wind has been out of the east, blowing the algae towards the western shore, so you can see it here. If you want to take a quick look at the wind, there's a wind link here. So looking at it right now, there it is coming out of the east, going towards the west, and so that's why you'll see the algae more on the west side of the lake with the winds the way they are. But going back a few more days to the last week, when there was no clouds, as you can see, clear skies, calm winds, the center of the lake concentrations get pretty high. That same day, there was a Sentinel imagery pass, and a few days later, my sister, Jackie, and brother-in-law Ed Lippisch took his plane out a few days after this image was taken. But just to talk about this real quick, this is the shortwave infrared, so this is not the way it looks to the human eye. But the natural imagery actually shows some things that don't show up on the shortwave infrared, and that's this stuff over here on the shoreline, which is lower in the water column. And so when Jackie and Ed were out there in the plane, let's flip over to Google Earth really quickly. This is not on my website, but this is Ed's flight track that day. She blogged on it on her blog. Let's go to the regular imagery. When they were crossing the shore here, I'm pretty sure this is where they were. Jackie took a photo, and this is what that looks like on her camera, this kind of blotchy peat green stuff offshore. And as they crossed back out over the water over here, she took a photo. I believe, I haven't spoken to her, but it looks like it's from here. I see this feature here. I think that is this right here. And so there they are looking that direction. And there's that same peat green stuff. And so I think that is it. Let's get back to Lake O. Yeah, real quick. This is kind of the way the clouds look now. So it's a little too cloudy to get any good imagery. One other thing on the satellite imagery, these satellites pass daily. They're lower resolution, but when things clear up, you can come here, and this is where the first signs of the blooms show up. But as you can see, it's all clouds the last couple of days. And that is my report.
So glad to kind of see that. That I appreciate Todd doing that, putting that together. Todd, were you on? Are you on the line? I didn't know whether you were still here. I appreciate that very much. That kind of Lake Okeechobee report.
Hey, Mark,
Getting back. Hey, Todd, thanks. You have any follow-up comments on that? I appreciate you showing that.
No, I mean, if anybody has any questions, I did get back from graduation, so I'm just grabbing some lunch before I go back to the office. If anybody had any questions, I could clarify on anything.
If you have any questions for Todd?
Yeah, Todd, this is Daryl. I'm quite impressed with your computer skills there. You're amazing, especially for an attorney.
No, that was great information. Great information, Todd. Very, very helpful for us to be able to understand what's going on. And I don't think in our history we've been able to see actually, what was going on there, because for years and years we'd get these discharges and they would start to blame it on whether it was septic seepage or whatever. And there was just arguments whether it was coming from the lake or not. And so to have what you're doing is it's just phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Certainly. Yeah. The satellite imagery really, shows what's there. And they're a very valuable resource internationally, everywhere.
Mark, you're still sharing your screen. Do you want to?
Well, I wanted to show, everybody see this image? This is what Todd showed earlier. The lake's at about 12.8 feet. But what I wanted to point out was, as he said, these are at 0, all the lakes south. But during that time in April, he showed the image like this that had all of these wide open. And this is when the lake was being discharged to the south, but it was being taken up by irrigation for the EAA. And the EAA takes up irrigation every year from the lake from November through May during that dry season. And that was during April 15th. They were taking up a lot of that. At about 130 billion gallons a year they take for irrigation. Then during the other times of the year, during this time when we got rains and then June, they were discharging through the STAs into the water conservation areas. So right now, if you go over to this side, over here on the left side of the screen, you see WCA 3A, Water Conservation Area 3A, which is all this area in here. It's supposed to be at 9.3 feet, but instead it's about a foot or over a foot above that. So the water level is flooding the water conservation areas because it's gotten filled up with the drainage from the EAA just recently. Over 325 billion gallons a year usually comes from the EAA drainage, and very little from the lake. So right now we're in a pretty tough position, because if the lake jumps up very high and the Corps has no other option, they can't put it south to the water conservation areas because they're completely full and they would drown tree islands. They can't get it out of the south end fast enough. And so we're pretty well stuck. But I just wanted to point that out as kind of a reminder to everybody how, the EA uses complete water supply from the lake when they need it during the dry season, and then during the wet season, they've filled up the water conservation areas. So if we have to get water south instead of east and west, then we can't do that. So I'll stop my share. Thanks for indulging me on that issue.
Mark,
Yeah.
can I say something? It's Nick Mater with
Hey,
River
Nick.
Kids.
Yep.
What I don't understand is we're talking about not being able to get it out of the South fast enough, but isn't that good? Don't we want more fresh water down in Florida Bay? And wouldn't that be a plan to make it easier to get all that fresh water down there?
Well, that's a good point. Yes, we do need to get it down there, especially during the dry season. So they need to work on that Tamiami Trail and those areas to get that water south through Everglades National Park to Florida Bay. So that's an issue as well. But what I'm saying is they can't get it down fast enough through there right now. They have to make those improvements before they can get it down, which is part of what they're working on. But at the same time, we're getting the water conservation areas get filled up, the tree islands get drowned in those areas, and you start impacting deer and other things in those environments.
Right.
So I just want to kind of make that point that the whole system's connected, and if we're all of a sudden, it's engineered to where if it's full to the south and they can't move water south, they're going to dump it east and west in those estuaries. So,
thank you.
But I appreciate you bringing that up. Lake Okeechobee.
Mark, we have a couple, 2 hands up. I don't know if they're old ones or not, but one ending in a cell phone from 238, and then Corinne's iPhone still have a hands up. I'll erase them if they've already had their questions answered.
Okay. All right.
Can I say something, please?
Sure. Who is that? Diane?
Goldberg, St. Lucie Audubon. Again, we can't just release it south. It's got to be clean first. So that's a big issue also.
Correct. And all of that water going south to the water conservation areas and the Everglades and Florida Bay has to go through the stormwater treatment areas. And remember, we bought 57,000 acres at over $2 billion over these many years to build those stormwater treatment areas at the bottom of the EAA. And all the basin runoff from the EAA goes through that, gets cleaned before it goes south. And the lake water, what little bit does go south, has to also go through the STAs. And you're correct, Diane. We don't want to send toxic blue-green algae south. We don't want to send dirty water south. But it does have to go through the stormwater treatment areas, which you and I pay for, and we pay $20 million a year to maintain. So, it's being used 90% by the basin runoff from the Everglades agricultural area. And I'm sorry to get adamant on that point. It gets real frustrating to me why they're allowed to use it, and we who the public paid for it can't use it for the public water.
Well, that's why I have been promoting a requirement that a percentage of these farm and ranch lands should have their own water retention areas right on their property.
You're absolutely right. And that's what we should require from all landowners, to hold that water, treat it before it goes into any works of the district or the waters of the state or the Everglades. Thanks very much for bringing that up. State legislation and federal legislation has come up as a question. And again, those are issues that, that we always want to bring up. I did talk a bit about the WRDA bill real quick. It has gone through the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and it's now headed to the House floor. And once it's voted in the House floor, the Senate the U.S. Senate has their WRDA bill ready, but it may not match up. So what happens is it goes to what they call conference. And so in September, it'll go to a conference committee, and they'll hash out the WRDA bill there. So the WRDA 2020 bill has a couple of things that got into it as amendments that are basically, some of them are good, and then some of them got pulled out. But the ones that are good are that made the Corps of Engineers check on those harmful algal blooms before they discharge to estuaries. It also reinforced the EA reservoir project as not a new start. It is part of the Central Everglades Plan. And it also took out anything reference to what's called the savings clause that some people wanted to put into the water bill. So that is no longer in the water bill. In general, they basically talked about Lake Okeechobee regulation and how that's going to go forward. But there were a lot of things that they in the committee area pulled out as well that weren't really good. So we have to be cognizant of how this bill goes through the Congress. It's, as I mentioned, gone through the House committee, now to the House floor. Then it goes to the Senate. And the Senate's already kind of approved theirs. And now it'll go to a conference in September. And hopefully by October, we'll have a WRDA bill. And it'll hopefully fund some of the ongoing legislation and things that are happening. Daryl, can I go ahead and share my screen again? So,
yeah, you go ahead now.
Let's see how I do that. So I wanted to share this screen with you, if everybody can see that. Can you see that it says Florida budget
yes,
up at the top?
you're good.
Okay, great. So this says, back in June, the end of June, beginning of July is when the Governor DeSantis signed the appropriations bill for $92.2 billion state budget. In that, there was $625 million for Everglades restoration and water resources. It included investments at $322 million for restoration, $50 million for springs, et cetera, moving on down the line, and $100 million for Florida Forever, which is actually a step in the right direction too. The governor also signed 2 water bills, the Environment Resource Management Act, which was otherwise known as the Clean Waterways Act, and the Environmental Accountability Act. And these 2 things kind of highlight some of the water quality things in there. I'm not going to go through a lot of that detail. But these are the 2 acts that we're talking about. The Environmental Resource Act, otherwise known as the Clean Water Act, and then the what they call the Environmental Accountability Act. Now, the Clean Water Act basically approached a couple of things. In septic tank issues, they addressed water treatment plants and how they upset and stopping those or monitoring those, and a little bit about biosolids application and getting permits, but basically about wastewater entering into the Indian River Lagoon and stuff from these upset power plant, wastewater plants. They have to get backup power supplies so that doesn't happen. But it really fell short in a lot of ways of addressing the real issues. And again, just like other legislation, when it goes through the state legislature, either the House or the Senate side, it gets pulled and manipulated and changed. And unfortunately, some of this comes out the way that it isn't as effective as when it started out, perhaps. But a lot of us were tracking both of these bills. The Accountability Act pretty much talks about the accountability for the agencies to be authorized. And one of the things they are doing in this act is changing over the direction on septic tanks and issues from Department of Health to the Department of Environmental Protection. So it may be a good thing there to do that. So that's kind of wanted to share that issue with everybody as well on the state legislation. Is there any other thoughts or comments on state legislation? What's going on there? All right. Well, this is going along pretty smooth. If I could share again, sharing my screen.
You're good. You're good to go.
What's that? Let's see. Share screen. Do this one. This is a water quality report for the local water quality conditions. Right now, as you can see, it's kind of a D plus. It was really worse than this during that situation. So we wanted to try to do that, but it was really a condition that is causing still a lot of local runoff, not discharges from the Okeechobee, but a lot of the rain and runoff, of course, we're getting even through C23, C24, and C40, and C25 up north are causing a lot of salinity conditions to change. I did want to, can you see this screen I'm sharing with the Water Management District? Daryl?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was given by Lawrence Glenn at the District Governing Board, and it had some interesting things about the blooms on the lake. As you saw from Todd Thurlow's videos and imagery, they use also, the district uses this imagery from the NOAA satellites to kind of predict those blooms or the bloom potential. So on July 4th, there was quite a bit of bloom potential. But in this one, I wanted to kind of point out there was some of these blooms that Jackie Thurlow-Lippisch and others reported in the lake, even in the lake, that were pretty high. And that big star right there is one of microcystin that's really great, very high potential. And in fact, you can see what those conditions are. These couple of samples that were given are 800 micrograms per liter. And remember, 8 micrograms per liter is the World Health Organization and EPA's limit on, on a safe load for those kind of microcystin levels. Here's another sample taken in the lake at 290 micrograms per liter. So one is 100 times and the other is several times greater than, of course, that limit level. And I wanted to kind of point that out. So whenever they take these samples, sometimes where they take them is important. Sometimes they're right in the middle of the bloom. Sometimes they're outside of the bloom. But if that bloom is around Port Mayaca and they have to do discharges, that's where this harmful algal bloom deviation has to take place. And they're going to have to be observing that and not allow it to come to the estuary. I might mention just this last one in here shows you all during last year, July of 19, all the way through this year, we haven't had any inflows from Lake Okeechobee. As you can see, the inflow from the lake in blue, there's been none. But it has been a lot from our local basin runoff, particularly in June of this year. We've gotten a lot of rains, which caused a lot of water quality to drop within our estuary and stirred up a lot of sediment. You can see the salinity graph down here in the lower right, where the salinity dropped way down to 0 and was really in a harmful mode for both seagrass and oyster reef. And then it gradually came up to that point. So we're gaining back with the flood tides and the big tides, but it is a problem, whenever we see these heavy rainfalls, that we still get discharges from C23, C24, and C25 in those canals. So that local basin runoff needs to be controlled. And we've got to not only build regional projects to do that, we have to require landowners upstream of all of those canals to hold and treat their water before it comes into those canals and gets discharged directly to the St. Lucie estuary. So that's kind of some local issues and waterways. I had down the Okeechobee waterway dredging as a part of the local issues, which we talked about. Indian River Keeper update. Indian River Keeper, we got Mike Connor. Hey,
yeah,
Mike.
Mark, hi.
Good.
You got me on the screen. Let me launch right into something. You talked about state legislation. If I may, in regards to the SB 712, the Clean Waterways Act, Waterkeepers Florida did run a bunch of op-eds around the state. And one of the first op-eds I saw here locally, I think, was written by Eve Samples and T.C. Palm, really kind of penning the act as being too weak. And since then, the act has a lot of op-eds were, let's say, not friendly about the bill, the final bill. If I may indulge you guys for a few minutes, let me just read a couple of excerpts from the official op-ed from Waterkeepers Florida. Watered down bill that will not fix water quality issues. It's entitled, Governor DeSantis signed into law 712, self-proclaimed Clean Waterways Act, but it's a bill that claims to be the solution but falls short of the mark. The bill's been praised by supporters, including Florida DEP, as one of the most environmentally progressive pieces of legislation over a decade. But you look back at the cuts and rollbacks that our environmental issues have had in the last state administration, that doesn't say a whole lot. At 111 pages, the bill lacks specifics and enforceability to solve our overriding problems. Proponents of the bill claim it implements recommendations of Blue-Green Algae Task Force, but even those common sense, albeit vague recommendations, will not be nearly achieved through the implementation of this bill. For example, the task force recommended the projected changes in demographics, land use, hydrology that should be incorporated in the basin management action plans, the BMAPs. You think about, we have 1,000 people moving to our state every day. That means at over a 20-year life of a BMAP, millions of people have already made their homes here and added additional stream to the already stressed resources. So in order for a BMAP to be successful, it needs to anticipate the changes and incorporate a plan to deal with them. Otherwise, it's destined to fail. Furthermore, the bill fails to immediately address the largest sources of nutrient pollution in our state, and that's agriculture. The task force recommended that the effectiveness of the BMPs, best management practices, should be supported by adequate data to justify the presumption of compliance with water quality standards. But the bill only increased monitoring for current BMPs, keep that in mind, that have proven to be ineffective at curbing water quality pollution. And one of the last points of the op-eds was regard to public health. The task force recommended that the FDEP establish defensible health advisories and water quality criteria for cyanotoxins, and the Department of Health should work with Florida DEP to implement a communication plan to inform the public about potential health risks associated with exposure to current blooms. Despite the harmful algal blooms that have already begun to plague our waterways, as we've seen from Lake O already this year, the ineffective signage isn't acceptable to warn users of the danger. This was not even addressed in the act in writing. I read the act myself, 111 pages long. I really didn't say a thing. In closing, the waterkeepers say a late stage amendment provided a provision that preempts local governments from passing rights of nature regulations, a growing international movement that recognizes species and ecosystems as entities with rights of their own that can be protected in a court of law. Despite months of advocacy and proposed amendments by Waterkeepers Florida, Sierra Club, and the Florida Springs Council, SB 712 in its final form falls far short of the measures needed to halt and reduce the decline of our state's waterways. It's a strong op-ed. It goes right to the point. Again, it's a 111-page bill, which I'm sure most people haven't read, but you can read it online. As far as Mark touched upon the dredging, I'm going to shift gears here real quick. The dredging draft assessment is available at the Corps' website, 65 pages long, and nowhere in that bill did they mention who the contractor is. They didn't talk about turbidity curtains. They didn't talk about controlling turbidity, the dewatering process, and those are the things you have to worry about. There was a terrible job done in the Miami Harbor entrance about 3 years ago, and my fears are this may be the same contractor. There's only a couple contractors that work in Florida. And our thoughts were, as Jim Moyer had said earlier, we were worried about the fact this was not really an environmental dredging project, it's a maintenance project, but all controls have to be put in place to protect our live animals in the St. Lucie and around the crossroads and the seagrass community by Sailor's Flats, which is destined to be impacted if, in fact, the dredging at the south end of this project is not controlled and turbidity gets out of hand. So we're concerned about that. I did contact the Corps again yesterday, Michael Ornella. I'm waiting for a response from him for more specifics about the actual dredge project and who's going to do the work. I have a little situation I ran into thanks to one of our members about glyphosate application in St. Lucie County. I want to share a little content, Daryl. If I can go ahead and share content right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you I'm going to show you a photograph. Here we go. Let's see if this works. Everybody see that okay? Does everybody have the photograph?
No.
Okay,
no,
you will now. How's that?
There you go. You're good.
There you go, Mike.
Okay, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the mosquito impoundments. There's 42 miles of these trails in St. Lucie County. This photograph is one I took about 2 weeks ago, and I hadn't been in there in about a year and a half. And the last time I was there, I was fishing those little creeks for tarpon in the impoundment. This was not what I saw. What I'm seeing now is the application results of glyphosate along the entire impoundment. And it kind of shocked me that much was done at that large scale. I did contact Commissioner Krzyzewski. To his credit, he got right back to me and put someone in touch with me, also the head guy that controls this in those impoundments. And he told me, absolutely, it's glyphosate. It's the best, most effective herbicide we have to control invasives. And it really surprised me. And we talked about what the invasives were. Most of these things, I think the gentleman was John Fine, I believe, at the last RC Zoom meeting. he mentioned the fact that a lot of that native plant life along the boulder zone, the water is 2 feet from those boulders at high tide. He mentioned a lot of those plants were native flowers, native plants that pollinators depend on. And there's a whole food web and ecosystem in those mangroves of butterflies, bees, pollinators. And he thought it was ludicrous that they would go along in just straight cool area. But I will be sitting down with St. Lucie County next week. I'm trying to get the day settled where we'll sit down with a couple commissioners and the guys that do the application and see where we can go with this. But it's something we should be concerned with because, the jury's out on some of the the toxicity of this stuff to aquatic. We have a shoreline along there that's losing seagrass hand over foot over the last 5 years. So you have to wonder what the correlation may be. And that's what I have on that. I'll report back next month of how that went. And I feel good about being able to sit down with the commissioners on this. Last but not least, and I want to come off the content if I can. How do I do that, Daryl?
The stop share.
Stop share. All right.
There you go.
This weekend, Indian River Keepers going to take part in the 13th annual. I hope that's going to be right for you. Well, it's going to be backwards. 13th annual Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup. Hope you all know about it. It's the 13th year of it. We'll be taking part up in the Middle River IRL, probably launching at Jensen Beach, the sailboat club ramp, or at the Jensen ramp. If anybody wants to get in on this and meet us up, and it won't be a live thing where people are going to have an after party and a gathering because of COVID, but it's going to be a 1 week long virtual cleanup. And you can go to the website for the Treasure Coast Cleanup, and I have it here for you, tcwaterwaycleanup.com. And they have the whole breakdown how it's going to work. They have a data card collection system where you will survey what you find, and it's going to be a week long. So you have the ability to do any day this week. And that goes for the beaches, the river, the lagoon, wherever you want to clean up on foot, from your boat. It's up to you. So we're really proud to be part of this weekend. If anybody wants to take part and meet up with us, just give my cell phone a call, 772-521-1882, and we'll maybe meet on the water in a safe social distance situation. Hope you'll be out there. We'll be out there from 8 o'clock till noon this coming Saturday. That's all I have right now. And I appreciate the time as always. Thank you.
All right. From our Indian River Keeper. All right. So we're down to member comments and announcements and issues. I do want to make one comment. We as a board reviewed kind of the recent Marine Resources Council has put out a sign-on situation for low impact design for Indian River Lagoon. This low impact designs is a kind of a criteria that's put forward to try to protect those water environments, particularly around the Indian River Lagoon and all those associated waterways. So we as a board kind of voted to work on that and join MRC on that signers for that. There will be a presentation, I think, for that, Jim, right, for next meeting, which is September 24th. We're trying to get a presentation on that. So we will not have a meeting in August. We skip August, but we will have meetings, the Rivers Coalition in September, October, November, and then no December meeting. So we will have 3 more meetings this year, and they're most likely going to be Zoom meetings because we're just not sure where the COVID-19 is going to carry us. And we're all having to kind of work through these Zoom meetings and kind of meet independently like this instead of together. So things like coastal cleanups, thanks for mentioning that. We can all join the river, but do it safely while we're out there on the waterways. Don't raft up in groups of large groups, because then you increase the spread of that kind of virus situation. Monitor who you contact, and let's all just keep safe and well for that. So I'll kind of open it up for other member comments or announcements right now. Any other?
Mark, this is Daryl. Is Merritt still there? Just to avoid a phone call for Merritt, I'll wait for him to come on if he's in
here.
The room.
I am.
But,
I'm here.
Merritt, just in your Stewart City Council meetings, is there any audience there? I just see the one screen. I don't see anybody, any other shot.
Daryl, there is some audience. Our chairs are spaced out. The Zoom meeting doesn't, the video feed doesn't show the audience. It's certainly less than pre-COVID. but depending on the items of topic, we do have, 5 to 20 at the maximum in our chambers. But it's limited capacity still, and everyone's required to wear masks. We're not at the point where we could, I don't think, host a Rivers Coalition meeting there.
Yeah, right.
That you just answered the question. Thank you. Perfect.
Thanks. And Commissioner, could we, and also the county, if you or the county, Diane Hughes was on, if we can let us know through Barbara, and she can get it out to all of the Rivers Coalition members if there are any issues coming up on the agendas for either the city meetings or the county meetings. That would be very helpful if we kind of knew ahead of time to alert people in our membership of the coalition. So if we can get those notices to Barbara, or if you see something coming up, let Barbara Osborne know, and she can put it out there on our to all the members. That would be appreciated.
Absolutely. And real quick to touch on what Mike Connors said, I'll be participating in the Treasure Coast Waterway cleanup. City of Stewart did it last year at Shepherd's Park and held an event. We're not doing that again this year, but I encourage everyone to participate. My plan is to head up Fraser Creek and, do it socially distanced. So encourage anyone to get out there and help clean up our waterways.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. I see when I drive to work out here on and stuff, I see bags flying out, those grocery bags or whatever, and they come out of back of people's truck or whatever, and they're going along the bridge. I wish I could just stop my truck and get out and pick it up, but it's of course unsafe. But I know eventually it blows up and over and into the waterway, and then it ends up hung up in the mangrove somewhere, or being ingested by sea turtles and other things that we all need to be conscious of. So even if we got to pick up the trash that's on the land before it gets into the water, I think that's still a good coastal cleanup, because we're all in this coastal area, and it eventually all gets into the water somehow.
So we got to be doing coastal cleanup constantly.
Yeah.
All right. Any other members? Nick Mader, we didn't talk about River Kids. I'm very sorry. I didn't have any Speakers Bureau kind of comments, but you got any River Kids comments?
Not much, just that I would like to put up on Facebook on the River Kids site. I would like to, if possible, and Blair, thank you for your presentation. But the Vote Water Voter Guide, if that's okay. I mean, it's something I think the kids should start looking at, and then educating their parents. And if anybody has any need for River Kids or wants to reach out to me, we'd probably like to be somehow involved in getting out and talking about Vote Water and being present wherever somebody may need us. So reach out to me. And then I have something else for Dolphin Ecology Project. I've been at Central Marine for years, for almost 10 years now, 9 years. And they're changing their structure, and their forklift isn't working. So I do have to move my boat. And if anybody knows of any free boat lift or place I can keep my boat in and out storage that may be willing to donate a little bit, I'd appreciate it. So that's it.
All right. Very good. I see
Mark, there's one comment here on the chat. Toxic Trail is next weekend, August 1st at Port Mayaca.
Yeah, I saw that. That's next weekend, 8/1 at Port Mayaca. And if you want more information, I think that's Becky Harris. You can contact Becky.
Hey, Mike, it's Eve Samples. Just a quick meeting update. Mike Connor mentioned the Blue-Green Algae Task Force and how few of those recommendations were embraced in Senate Bill 712. Well, that task force, which was created right after DeSantis took office, hasn't met since last October. But the next meeting finally just popped on the calendar for Wednesday, July 29th. It's at 8 a.m. And if you Google Blue-Green Algae Task Force Florida, you can find a Zoom link there. So that'll be an important one, and I think a starting place for where we head in terms of policy for the 2021 session.
This is Ronaldo. I wanted to add that I'm sorry I'm out in the field, and it's raining, so hopefully you can still hear me. But Mike had, I'm gonna I'm gonna refrain from tying 712 to the whipping post like the rest of us. But there's one thing that Mike touched on, and that's the need for a statewide warning sign. That's something obviously me and a couple of the other water keepers have been working on really hard. And because of my work in around Lake Okeechobee and Palm Beach County, like Canal Point and Pahokee, I was really able to highlight like those communities unfortunately are the prime example of why we need a statewide warning system, because the signs they get there are just inadequate. And I've had a really good relationship with the Southeast office of DEP, and working with them, they actually with us, together we got on the agenda, one of the top issues that they're going to talk about is the statewide warning sign. And they'll probably show some of the pictures that I've taken, which basically shows that in communities like Canal Point, they literally get like a piece of computer paper that's laminated and stapled to a little wood stake. It's very inadequate, and they say it's temporary and that they're going to get metal signs, but they never put it up. And there's so many issues involving that, but if anybody can participate in that blue-green algae task force, and that's definitely an issue that's really close to us, to provide comment and just point out that, hey, maybe if you live like in a community, like I know Martin County has better signs. They're made of metal, they're super durable. There's the one that's been at Port Mayaca probably for a year or two, and it looks brand new still while it's out there. So any opportunity to highlight that gives us an opportunity to address, hopefully, or start new policy that 712 failed to address.
Ronaldo, if I may, Palm Beach County is responsible, Palm Beach County Department of Health, correct, for posting that?
Right. So basically, here's the problem. So the problem is that there's no statewide law that says if there's a bloom, this sign gets posted and this is what the sign should look like. And that's really the crux in it. So right now it's up to individual counties, the Department of Health specifically, to post a sign. So what happens is when we make our report to DEP saying there's a bloom here, they follow up, they do their test, they send that data up to Tallahassee. Then it's Tallahassee that sends the information to the county Department of Health. And it's up to each individual county's Department of Health to post the signs up. So the problem with that is certain communities, like the Glades communities, are just going to be neglected because the county doesn't seem to think that people in those communities warrant a warning. And it's a problem because some certain sites, like the 352 spillway in Canal Point, every time I'm there sampling, which is a lot, it's at least a couple times a week. Every time I'm there, there's at least a couple people fishing, and they're not bass fishing. They're putting fish in their cooler. And this was even like, last Friday where it's just putrid green and toxic, and there's still people putting fish in their cooler. And they, to the Department of Health's credit, they did put up a couple signs after I pestered them long enough, a year later, but it's still literally a piece of computer paper stapled to a post. And then the first sign that they put up said red tide. It didn't even say cyanobacteria. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the Southeast office and the DEP recognizes that. So they're going to be, I think, on our side on this issue, which is, pretty rare. So let's take advantage of it, and let's make sure that they know that the community is on a state agency side on this issue, and that, we need this policy made.
Thanks, Ronaldo, for bringing that up. Really appreciate that. I think that, it's up to all of us to kind of in these areas and stuff where you notice that we need to be that responsible kind of situation. I did want to, again, that blue-green algae task force is coming up, this coming Wednesday, July 29th at 8:30. So we did circulate the information. You just click on there, the sign, you can join the website and get information off the website. So it's an important one where during these meetings we can all weigh in, and I'm sure they'll have time for comments and things to go forward. So appreciate that.
Yeah, Mark, regarding that link, Daryl here. It's not they at least said on that it's not a link or an invite that you can pass around, because it is your password is yours to you personally specifically. So you actually need to click on that link.
Yeah, to register. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. The next governing board.
Mark.
Yeah, who's that?
Toby.
Hey, Toby.
Hey, I just wanted to answer a couple things and then comment a couple items here. I would encourage you to look at some of the stuff that didn't pass, unfortunately. One of those being Bill 1363. If you could take a look at that one when you get a chance, that's specifically about BMAPs. I actually authored that one, brought it forward, and the senator that ended up passing 712 chose not to take a lot of the information that was within that. And it specifically addressed BMAPs. It specifically addressed a reporting situation where we would be looking at the various polluters within the regions in BMAPs and publishing how they were doing, et cetera. It also looked at increasing BMPs throughout the entire basins, and it also looked at modifying those and making them mandatory as well. So, and if it wasn't going to be, if they did not choose to take those, that in fact DEP was going to take over the enforcement of those areas as well. I will be looking at putting that back into the legislature this year. And, all I can say is, look, guys, I'm here in Stewart. My office is downtown. I'm more than willing to meet with any one of you at any time. And I continue to have that. I got to meet with Mark last year in Tallahassee. Other than that, I'd love to meet with you guys. I'd love to understand more of what your thoughts are, how we can improve on this. Mike, I know you and your organization have a great history throughout the state, and that's what we need to focus on, is this throughout the state. It's a system. I'm going to be going and doing a tour with Drew Bartlett on the 6th of August, and we're going down to look at the Tamiami Trail and look at, it was something that I initiated to get down there to make sure that we're looking at the end so we can get more water going south, can get more water into the bay. And, what's interesting is we're looking at getting more water into the bay. And every time I say that, they're saying, well, we're worried about getting more water into the bay. Look, we need to get water through the system. And, I couldn't agree more with that. I couldn't agree more with getting a drain working on the south end. There's a lot more that I can talk about. One of the things is working with Find to expand upon the dredging, and specifically around some of our bridge areas, and having that more as a sink. So we have an expansion around the Palm City Bridge. We've seen the mud flats there. We've seen the muck that's sitting there. If we can expand upon that, it's one of the areas we're going to be working on this year. And hopefully over the next 2 years on that, and also around the Roosevelt Bridge and working those areas. So again, I don't want to dominate or anything like that, but feel free, come and see me anytime. Call me. My cell phone number, guys, it's out there, 772-260-9689. Feel free to call me anytime. Happy to talk on these issues and anything else going forward. Thank you.
You mentioned that was House Bill 1363.
1363, yes.
We can still look at that if it's on the.
Yep, you can actually just go to my my legislative site at the House, and the language is there. There's also the staff analyses, et cetera, that are there. And if we can improve upon it, let's do it.
All right. Thanks very
much.
much.
Mark, can I just ask Toby just one question real quick?
Sure.
Toby, would you be able to, we've sent you the survey from Boatwater. If you could fill out the survey, that would help us in a big way in terms of where you stand on those 5 issues. So if you could do that, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. So Blair, I know that, you know me pretty well. The side that I like to answer everything very honestly. And question number 4 deals with sugar money. And I'm not taking sugar money. You can feel free to look at my financials, but it also says in those affiliated with. So I take that as, I work with engineering companies. I work with cattle companies, with agriculture, with other things like that throughout. And they do support me and support the campaign. And I'm glad to be able to ask this question. What is Votewater's feeling about those entities? Because they do support me.
I think it's one of those things where we would just have to look at it. I think we would look at the organizations. Again, that's just one question. and you can
Sure.
put that in your response. And so on the actual voter guide, people would be able to read that, and you can put that in. It's not restricted by word count. You can say all of that in your response in the survey on that particular question. And so clearly, we're looking at this holistically, not just with sugar.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think that, you know, of all the questions, that was the only one that gave me consternation because I wanted to answer it honestly and correctly. So thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for that. All right. Any other quick comments or things? I want everybody to stay safe and well. And if you do have any questions, want to route them through Barbara, through the info@riverscoalition.org site, or Daryl, or myself, or any Charles, or Jim, or Blair. All of us are open for any of your comments, thoughts, or questions. Otherwise, we'll see you. The next meeting will be September 24th, and we'll hopefully have some good presentations on things coming up. So everybody stay tuned. Listen up for our notices to meetings. We'll get them as soon as we find out about them. And if you find out about a meeting coming up, like Eve Samples brought up about blue-green algae, please get it to us so we can get it out to everybody right away. And we'll keep on track with that. So no more being said. I just appreciate the meeting. Wonderful. We're right on time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thanks again, Daryl, for doing it up. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buddy.
Bye.
I'll take
Good
care.
night, everybody.